FARC, Colombia, revolutionary rebels and reluctant recruits. Picture this: Colombia, 1960s. Coffee, mountains, and one of the world's messiest, longest-running civil wars. Enter FARC, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. On the outside, anti-government Che Guevara energy. Inside, recruitment strategy so desperate it included kids barely tall enough to see over a rebel-issued AK-47. For decades, FARC cooked up a regime where children became soldiers, volunteering mostly because, surprise, they had zero other options. Imagine being 12 and getting drafted, not for soccer, but to enforce revolutionary justice in the rainforest. Even the United Nations called out FARC for making child labor look like a warm-up act for what they put kids through. Some joined escaping poverty. Most knew saying no wasn't on the table unless you enjoyed the idea of never being seen again. FARC's youth boot camps weren't exactly Hogwarts. Think less magic, more forced marches, guerrilla ideology studies, and of course, assembling guns before you're old enough to get your learner's permit. By the 2016 peace deal, FARC handed over hundreds of child soldiers, proof that after-school activities can look wildly different depending on where you grow up. Ironically, their big anti-inequality ideology ended up feeding kids into the very cycle they were fighting against. Kind of the worst internship ever, honestly. ELN, Colombia, the guerrilla youth group your parents warned you about. Let's meet FARC's sibling rivalry in Colombia, the National Liberation Army, ELN. If FARC was the big boss, ELN was the scrappy underdog with equally big ambitions and even messier ethical lines. Founded in 1964 and inspired by the Cuban Revolution, because nothing triggers a revolution like a Che t-shirt, ELN loved recruiting kids from rural villages who were dealing with about 8 different flavors of poverty. Less summer camp, more firearms orientation with a side of Marxism. Here's a plot twist. ELN recruited thousands of niños not just as soldiers, but as informants, human shields, and even bomb makers, literally playing Minecraft IRL but in the worst possible way. In one famous incident, ELN abducted school kids en masse just to flex, file under events that would not pass vetting for field trips. And the kicker? Anyone suggesting "please let me go home" risked a one-way ticket to nowhere. ELN once declared, "We don't recruit children," which historian Charles Berquist called the world's deadliest inside joke. Even into the 2020s, their operations pulled in kids as the preferred blank slate, easier to radicalize, easier to control. ELN, bringing a whole new meaning to the phrase growing pains. Lord's Resistance Army, Uganda's Nightmares, Kony's Playbook. Welcome to northern Uganda, where the phrase "run for your lives" became a literal nightly routine, thanks to Joseph Kony and his Lord's Resistance Army, LRA. Legend has it, Kony read How to Lose Friends and Alienate the World and called it a battle manual. The LRA abducted over 20,000 children, forcing them to murder, loot, and occasionally play Simon Says. But instead of touch your nose, it was burn down that village. Kids were force-fed violence, then told to smile for the apocalypse. Therapy bills pending for 2040. John Colker, a human rights founder, said, "Children weren't just child soldiers, they were weapons." The LRA's evil genius? Forcing kids to brutalize their own communities, guaranteeing they couldn't go home. See Psychological Trap, level 9000. Oh, and there's no HR department. Escape means risking your life. Even now, the LRA haunts military textbooks as how to create trauma at scale. Do not actually try. Kony's reign got so infamous that even Hollywood got involved. Remember, Kony 2012? Millennials do, even if the plan was basically Stop him with internet vibes. Honestly, if Fear had a franchise, Coney would win Best Director. Revolutionary United Front, Sierra Leone's diamond-fueled nightmare. Diamonds are forever, unless you're trapped in Sierra Leone's civil war and they're paying for your 8-year-old to wield an AK. The RUF, Revolutionary United Front, took kids with ambition and gave them blood diamonds and a crash course in violence. Their signature move wasn't to sparkle, it was hacking limbs and recruiting children as future warlords. Here's the wild part. RUF didn't just use fear, they motivated with amphetamines and cheap lies about battlefield glory. Former child soldier Ishmael Bia recalled, "We were brainwashed, then high. Violence felt normal. If your job orientation includes narcotics and machetes, it's not a good gig." By war's end, kids, some as young as 8, were RUF's most loyal foot soldiers, which says something about unchecked trauma and how not to parent. At one point, UNICEF estimated half of the RUF's combatants were children. Western journalists called them children of the gun, but locals, they called them stolen futures. Honestly, if Blood Diamond had a spin-off, this would be it, and you'd never want the movie rights. Khmer Rouge, when adolescence met apocalypse. If the Khmer Rouge had a high school yearbook, every caption would read, "Most likely to overthrow civilization." Led by Pol Pot, they basically turned Cambodia into one giant dystopian group project, where the only supplies were rice, paranoia, and child soldiers. Forget childhood. Under Khmer Rouge, kids were handed rifles and told, "Congrats, you're today's morality police," with fatal consequences. The regime worshipped purity. Translation, the younger, the better to remold into relentless ideologues. One survivor said, "They taught us to turn in our parents. That's how trust died." Why kids? Because they obey orders, lack baggage, and can learn new, terrifying hobbies like torture without blinking. Add to this the infamous Angkor, literally the organization, which sounded cool but basically meant Big Brother is always watching and he's 14. By 1979, child soldiers helped enforce policies that wiped out nearly 2 million people. The Khmer Rouge is what happens when you combine toxic parenting with a student council coup. Cambodia still counts the cost. Gen Z angst? Imagine it, but make it state policy. Tatmadaw, Myanmar, Boys to Beasts, Military Edition. Myanmar's Tatmadaw really said, "No child left behind in a village." The military junta, imagine if the Power Rangers were all evil uncles, has spent decades scooping up poor and orphaned kids for its ranks. If you're a street kid in Yangon, there's a solid chance your career day involves a uniform, a rifle, and a 70% chance of PTSD instead of pizza. The Tatmadaw mastered recruitment by tricking, kidnapping, or bribing kids with the world's lamest promise: food and shelter with a side of state-sponsored violence. Fun fact, in 2012, the UN called Myanmar the world's largest child army, and nobody wants to win that title at prom. Kids barely old enough to spell dictatorship became pawns in battles against rebels, forced laborers, or, if lucky, drivers for grown-up soldiers too tired to fight. One former recruit told the BBC, "They lied and said I would be paid, but I just became their slave." International pressure has forced reforms, but child-free military is still more vision board than reality. In short, the Tatmadaw built a legacy of trauma, where playgrounds are replaced by boot camps. Islamic State, ISIS, cubs of the caliphate, not as cuddly as they sound. Imagine your average after-school club, but instead of chess or basketball, it's terrorist boot camp for kids. Welcome to ISIS, aka the world's worst babysitters. In Syria and Iraq, the so-called Cubs of the Caliphate were straight-up pre-teens in training for global mayhem. Propaganda videos showed 6-year-olds learning to fire AKs like they're prepping for a Minecraft boss fight. They were not, in fact, prepping for Minecraft. ISIS took recruitment to another level. Indoctrination camps with ideological marathons and weapons drills. Their strategy: the younger you start, the scarier you get. Kids became the face of shock and awe PR, starring in viral videos with slogans like "victory or martyrdom," sort of like TikTok trends, but absolutely cursed. One UN report found some cubs forced into suicide bombings because apparently school activities means something different under ISIS rule. As Syrian defector Hamoud Sheikh Ali put it, brainwashing starts early. Children become the tools of terror. These kids are now left with trauma, no Hogwarts letter, and an international hunt to deprogram the most weaponized childhoods ever engineered. DRC Armed Groups, child soldiers in the heart of darkness. If you're searching for the poster child of weaponized childhood, look no further than the Democratic Republic of Congo. Here, armed groups, Mai Mai, M23, FDLR, pick your faction, have been embroiled in resource wars so complex that even Google Maps can't help. And guess what? The real infantry isn't grizzled warriors, but kids. Up to 30,000 children, that's like your whole undergrad class plus everyone in the cafeteria, have been yanked from their villages, pressed into service as fighters, cooks, sex slaves, or literal human shields. The UN's Leila Zerougi said, "The DRC is ground zero for the tragedy of child soldiers." Even more brutal? Kids join both to escape poverty, and because, if they don't, someone's likely to show up and recruit their entire family with machetes. It's weaponized FOMO, fear of missing out on survival. Sometimes groups make the kids kill family members first, so there's nowhere to run back to. The country's conflicts keep mutating, which means the cycle just doesn't stop. DRC's child soldiers are a haunting echo. When kids are forced to be adults by war, everybody loses, except the arms dealers. Found this video interesting? Leave us a like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Let us know what we should cover next in the comments below.